Chapter 18. The Prize. The old man opened the door to his bedroom. Stretched out on a cot, sound asleep, was Bobby Reed. Before anyone could speak, the old man put his fingers to his lips and closed the door. Then he said, "Is he my great-grandson?" "Yes," the Hollisters said together. Moses Twigg sat down in his rocking chair again. He asked them to tell him all they knew. He himself had little to reveal. While walking on the shore the afternoon before, he had come upon Bobby. The boy was crying and admitted that he was very hungry. He had said his name was Bobby Reed, which had meant nothing to old Mo at that time. "Of course I didn't tell the lad my name," he said. "I've kept it a secret all these years. After my store burned, I seemed to lose interest in everything and decided to go away and live all alone." Well, about Bobby, the boy was so exhausted that I carried him most of the way to my cabin. "That's why his footprints ended so suddenly," Pete remarked. Old Mo smiled. "I gave Bobby a good meal and put him to bed. He hasn't awakened yet." Mrs. Hollister spoke up. "It's a miracle that you should have been the one to find him. You have no idea how many people have been looking for Bobby. I'm so glad that he's safe." "We're all glad," Holly said. "I have a suggestion," Mr. Hollister said. "Suppose we go back to the boat, and after Bobby wakes up, Mr. Twigg, you bring him to the Sweetie Pie. In the meantime, I'll find a telephone and notify his mother that Bobby is safe." Moses Twigg agreed to this plan, saying, "I know Bobby will be overjoyed to see his Hollister friends again." "I'll have dinner waiting for all of us," Mrs. Hollister said. As soon as they reached the Sweetie Pie, her husband suggested that he and Pete take the rowboat and go up the river until they came to a house that had a telephone. They lowered the boat and set off. Mr. Hollister rowed until he became weary, then Pete took a turn. Still, they did not come to any cabins. "This is really wild country down here," Mr. Hollister observed after a while. "I wonder if old Mo will ever want to leave it," Pete said. "Probably Bobby's mother will want him to live with them, but I bet he'll be sorry to go away from the woods." "I think you're right, son," Mr. Hollister agreed. "A city would seem pretty stuffy to old Mo now." They rode along in silence for another 15 minutes. Then at last Mr. Hollister saw a cabin. A wire running from it indicated it must have a telephone. Pete pulled into the dock and they climbed out. A pleasant-looking woman came to the door when they knocked and said she had a telephone which they might use. "Suppose you put in the call, Pete," his father smiled. "After all, you and Ricky and the girls really solved this mystery." He got in touch with the Shoreham police and asked for Officer Cal. When he told his news, the policeman whistled. "That's wonderful, Pete," he praised him. "I said you'd solve the mystery." Officer Cal promised to get in touch with Bobby's mother at once. He knew she would be at the Shoreham Municipal Pier when the Sweetie Pie docked. Did Pete have any idea when they would get back? Pete turned to his father. "When do you think we'll reach Shoreham?" he asked. "Well, I hope our boat's not trapped by that tree," Mr. Hollister replied. "But I'd say we can make Shoreham by evening." His son told this to Officer Cal, and the policeman said he would go over to the Reed home at once. "That's an amazing story," the woman said as she accepted Mr. Hollister's money in payment for the telephone call. Then she waved goodbye to them. It did not take Pete and his father so long to get back to the Sweetie Pie as it had to find the telephone, because they went downstream. When they reached the boat, a surprise awaited them. Old Mo and Bobby Reed had come to the cruiser, and now everyone was enjoying the big meal which Mrs. Hollister had prepared. "Bobby," Pete cried, going up to him, "it sure is swell to see you again." Bobby smiled. "This is the happiest day of my life, Pete," he said. He went on excitedly, not even pausing for breath. "I hear my mother's home and I've found my great-grandfather, and he's going to let me catch the biggest fish in the Muscong River so I can win the prize at the trading post." Pete laughed. "We all hope you do," he said, as he helped himself to some potato salad. During the meal, several stories were exchanged. Bobby was amazed to hear how the Hollisters had been searching for him for days. "I didn't mean to worry anybody," he explained. "I just wanted to try to find the biggest fish so that I could win the prize." "Is that the only reason you ran away?" Ricky asked him. "No, not the only one," replied Bobby. Then he told them that he did not want to live with Mr. Gillis any longer. "Did you take the old boat from under the bridge?" Pam asked. "Yes, I did. I made up my mind when I found a couple of old oars in the bushes. But I could hardly keep the old tub afloat because she was leaking in all her seams." "Did you lose the boat in the storm?" Ricky wanted to know. Bobby said that he had. He had hit a rock and rammed a hole in the bottom. "I had to let the old thing sink and swim ashore," he continued. "For 2 days I kept on walking through the woods, following the river. Once in a while I met somebody who gave me food. But for 1 whole day I didn't have anything." He looked at Old Mo and smiled. "That is," the boy added happily, "not until my great-grandfather found me." As Old Mo beamed at him, Bobby declared proudly, "Old Mo's the best fisherman in the world. He has lots of different lures which will catch any kind of fish in the Muskong River." "Then he'll give you a great big fish so you'll win the prize at the trading post, won't he?" Ricky remarked. Old Mo held up his hand. "No," he said firmly. "If Bobby wants to win that prize, he'll have to catch the fish all by himself." "That's right," Mr. Hollister agreed. Old Mo told them that he knew of a pool down the river about half-mile, where there was a whopper of a clownfish. "I tried to catch him myself, but he broke one of my lines. I was going to try to catch him today, but it'll be fine if Bobby does it." As the meal ended, plans were made for all of them to go back to Shoreham on the Sweetie Pie. "I know your mother will be so happy to see you, Bobby," Mrs. Hollister said, beaming. "And we've solved another mystery," Ricky said gleefully. "Won't Officer Cal be glad to hear about this?" "We've found all we set out for," Pam said dreamily. Ricky spoke up quickly. "Oh, no, we haven't," he said, grinning. "I haven't found a Lopadoopolis for Mr. Kint." When Old Mo heard this, he scratched his head. "A Lopadoopolis?" he asked. "What's that?" Pete winked at the old man and told him that it was some kind of creature that the nice editor wanted for his aquarium. "Now say," Old Mo said with a big grin, "I think I know what you want. Come, follow me, Ricky." All the children followed him. Old Mo led them to a spring a short distance in the woods. "Now if you look down in there," he said, "you will see a Lopadoopolis." "I only see a turtle," Sue piped up. "Me too," Ricky said, "but it's the funniest one I've ever seen. It has 2 heads." As he spoke, the turtle swam to the surface of the spring. Indeed, it did have 2 heads, and the Hollisters laughed when they saw it. "I didn't know a Lopadoopolis was a 2-headed turtle," Ricky said, almost ready to believe the story. Old Mo put his hand into the water. The turtle swam right into it. "It has 1 head on the front and another on the back where the tail should be," Ricky cried. Holly looked so close that her nose nearly touched the turtle. "Is this what you call a freak of nature?" she asked. "It is that," Old Mo said, "but I'm afraid I'll have to confess that I made the turtle that way. That head on the back of the turtle is made of wood, and I have a secret way of fastening it onto the turtle's shell." He turned the turtle upside down. It did have a little tail, which was right under the make-believe head. "This would be a wonderful thing to give to Mr. Kint," Ricky said, his eyes dancing. "You may have him," Old Mo said, handing the turtle over. "Oh boy, this is great," Ricky cried. "Thanks a lot." They returned to the Sweetie Pie, and Mr. Hollister said they must get started. Bobby still had to catch the big fish, and they might have trouble moving the cruiser. While Bobby and Pete went back to Old Mo's cabin, for a stout fish pole and a crate in which to keep the fish alive, Mr. Hollister and Old Mo cut away as many branches as they could from the fallen tree alongside the boat. When Pete and Bobby returned, everyone got aboard and Mr. Hollister started the engine. A few tries and they were clear of the old tree. It was not long before they were out in the middle of the stream. "Where does the big fish live?" Mr. Hollister asked Old Mo. The old man pointed to a spot on the left bank. When they reached it, Mr. Hollister stopped and dropped anchor. Old Mo handed Bobby Reed the fishing pole. "Cast way over there by that old stump," he directed. Bobby made several casts, but did not come close enough for the stump. On the fourth try, though, the lure dropped right next to the stump. Immediately, there was a great swish and a splash. "He's got it! He's got it!" Ricky exclaimed. Bobby battled the big fish as it swam back and forth and jumped from the water to try to shake the hook from its mouth. All the while, Bobby kept reeling in. Finally, the big clownfish flopped over exhausted near the side of the boat, and Old Mo gave Bobby a net, which he lowered to scoop up the fish. What a tremendous bass it was! "Golly, it'll touch both sides of our tank at the trading post," Ricky cried, as it was put into the crate and the lid fastened. Then the crate was put into the water and secured by long ropes to the railing of the boat. "This will surely win the prize," Mr. Hollister said with a chuckle. "Any fish bigger than this I'd call a whale." Up the river they all went, singing songs on the way. It was late in the afternoon when they arrived at Shoreham's municipal dock. "There's my mother," Bobby cried, hurrying off the cruiser with the others following. When Mrs. Reed saw her son, she flung her arms around him, weeping and laughing all at the same time. "Oh, I'm so glad you're safe. And these are your friends, the Hollisters. What splendid friends they are." Mrs. Reed turned to Bobby's great-grandfather and hugged him, saying she could hardly believe her good fortune. "This is so wonderful," she kept repeating. "And we're going to live with him," said Bobby, "in a nice new house down the river, great-grandfather told me." The next day, the newspaper carried a big story about the rescue of Bobby Reed and the finding of old Moses Twig. It told how the Hollister children had won the reward Mr. Fender had offered, and how they in turn had said it was to go to Bobby. The bass contest was more successful than Mr. Hollister had ever thought possible. He had had to rent a very large tank from a fish store to hold all the fish that were brought in. When the final day came, the children rushed down to the trading post to see who had won. In the window was a sign which read, "Prize for the largest clownfish caught in the Muskong River, won by Bobby Reed." "Hooray!" cried Ricky, and the others joined in. "Thanks," said a voice behind them. They turned to see the smiling face of their new friend Bobby, and told him how glad they were he had won. "Come in and see what my prize is," he said. "I'll bet it'll be a fish pole," Ricky guessed. "No," Bobby answered. "Your father says I may have a rowboat to go with our new home. We're moving tomorrow. Be sure to come and see us." "We will." 2 days later, Uncle Russ returned to pick up his boat. He was so happy that everyone was safe and the children had found Bobby Reed, he said he did not mind a few scratches on the sweetie pie. After he left, Ricky announced rather abruptly, "I just found out Mr. Kent's home from his vacation. I have to go see him." The other children giggled because they knew why. All 5 of them went to the newspaper office and were ushered into Mr. Kent's office. "Well, what can I do for you today?" he asked with a big smile. Ricky stepped forward. "I have something for you, Mr. Kent," he said, holding one hand behind his back. "What is it, son?" Ricky held the 2-headed turtle toward him. "Here's your Lopadoopolis," he said. Mr. Kent's jaw dropped and his eyes popped. Then he joined the children in laughing when he heard about the discovery of the Lopadoopolis. Lifting the top off his aquarium, he put the turtle inside. "Thanks to you, Ricky," he said, "I have the most unusual collection of reptiles in the world, I'm sure." "Is there any other strange creature you want us to look for?" Ricky asked. "If there is, the Happy Hollisters will find it for you."